How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be giving you guys an in-depth review on Aerodrome Finance. We're going to be going over things like its white paper, its tokenomics, its current chart, and then I'm going to get into my own conviction on Aerodrome Finance, give an updated conviction because we've talked about this project numerous times. But this is going to be a completely different video than normal because we're going to get in depth on things like the white paper like we just talked about and give a little bit more detail than we used to when I was doing these videos. As well as that, I'm not really going to be giving a price prediction. I'll throw that in at the end, but know that you should very much take that loosely and none of this is financial advice. I'm taking a look at Aerodrome Finance's white paper. As you guys can see here, we're not going to get too in depth on it. I'm just going to go over basically a summary of its white paper. Now, in terms of the white paper, just to dumb it down and give a little simplification on Aerodrome Finance's and their white paper, as you can see, essentially Aerodrome is a next generation DEX built on the base blockchain, which they have a focus on efficient liquidity incentives through their V token model, which is definitely inspired by that of Velodrome, which is their sister protocol. Now, when reading their white paper, their goal that stands out is they want to go and create a self-sustaining liquidity hub on base, which incentivizes both liquidity providers and token holders long term. So basically people who are interacting with Aerodrome, they are trying to build a system that goes and actually very much benefits the users of their token. In terms of their mechanism, they do use the AERO, so AERO. When you lock up your AERO tokens for voting power, boosted rewards, and fee sharing, the longer you lock, the bigger you end up actually earning, because they are essentially using that AERO and the whole network is using that AERO, where you then, the longer you just let people use it and let it be in the system, you are going to get more rewards for that, if that makes sense. Now, this is their emission model. A lot of people have talked about this in terms of inflation, where new AERO tokens are emitted each week, and AERO holders, the people who are vesting the AERO, vote on where those emissions go. Basically, liquidity providers, those who are providing liquidity into the total value locked, get rewarded where the voters direct it towards. Now, another key mechanism of Aerodrome Finance are bribes. Projects can bribe these AERO voters to direct emissions to their pools. So we've seen a lot of this. If you go on Aerodrome Finance's X page, you'll see a lot of examples. For example, as you can see, we have Zora is a token here, and Hyper. This has to do with their bribes. They do end up interacting with these tokens, where again, those who are the AERO voters are participating with these tokens that will go and launch on base that Aerodrome can then interact with. So in short, on the white paper, you get into tokenomics, you get into a lot of things that go over what Aerodrome Finance is trying to do to separate itself. And it's very interesting to go and read. I'd highly suggest you read it yourself, as well as any project you go and invest into. Try to understand what they are saying. But essentially what this is Aerodrome is a DEX. They're trying to go and make incentives for users and ultimately make base a more welcoming place for a lot of other tokens, and just trying to interact as a DeFi protocol that does help a lot with the chain. Now, looking into tokenomics, here's the white paper, but I've also pulled it up on a different document. Essentially, the total supply of Aerodrome is around 500 million tokens, and the initial distribution, as you guys can see here, we have around 40% to liquidity providers and voters over emissions, 30% to the Aerodrome team and investors. There is also vesting with that, 20% to protocol-owned liquidity, and 10% to ecosystem incentives and grants. Now, one big thing in terms of the tokenomics, that in terms of investing into Aerodrome Finance, this is brought up a lot, is in regards to inflation. So there is heavy weighting towards the community incentives, but with inflation, there's a lot of concerns. Essentially, the inflation concern is as more AERO is minted and distributed to liquidity providers and voters, without a corresponding increase in demand, the token could then experience downward pressure on its price, which leaves a lot of investors, and I've heard this numerous times, worried due to that inflation, and we have seen it have an impact on Aerodrome Finance's market cap in relation to its price. Now, the problem with this is if Aerodrome does not keep getting more and more attention, then there's going to be less and less people interacting with the token, buying the token. Therefore, the supply is going to continue to be inflated because there's not new activity being involved, if that makes sense. Now, the good news is AERO, like we've said, locks up a significant portion of AERO, which definitely helps negate a lot of the inflation effects. Therefore, it's not as big of a problem as people expect, but yes, it does definitely pose a problem when right now Aerodrome should be around $1 token if you're considering inflation in tokenomics from when it was around its initial release. Now let's go over some of the partnerships that are involved with Aerodrome. And again, we've just seen here a couple of base tokens who are interacting with Aerodrome. There's a ton of base tokens that interact with Aerodrome. You can see Social Value Crypto. You can just scroll through the X page and you'll see a bunch of different partnerships that ultimately just continues to build on Aerodrome and ultimately continues to put more emphasis on how useful Aerodrome actually is as a protocol. Now, one big thing is Aerodrome is actually a part of Coinbase Ventures portfolio. You can look this up, and as you guys can see, the base ecosystem fund, Aerodrome Finance, is right here on Coinbase Ventures' own website. So they are investing in this token. They have been really since its inception, which is definitely really good to see that major backing from that of Coinbase. It's of course listed on Coinbase as well, but Aerodrome clearly is important enough that of Coinbase, who's access to numerous more amounts of information and money than the average investor. They of course know some things that we do not, or they just know that this is a project that they see doing very great in the future. So just wanted to keep that in mind. Now, in terms of Aerodrome Finance's chart, this isn't going to be a great view on technical analysis here, but you guys can kind of see we were in a downtrend from this kind of line that I drew to the low line that I was drawing. So it's kind of bouncing off these levels where we kind of broke out of that and are starting to move. And this is on the 4-hour chart, but essentially at 60 cents per Aerodrome. If we can continue this bullish momentum here, and again, please, I'd just like you guys to reiterate, I am not that good at technical analysis, but just kind of getting into this, there are so many bullish fair value gaps contained here, and if we can fill this one and continue up higher to make a new high from where we were. So if you guys look, we made a high, a low. This one broke above these previous highs. I guess this was our last previous high. This broke above it. This broke above this one. This one broke above this one. This one broke above this one. This one. As you can see, higher highs, and now we want higher lows to follow. So assuming that, we'd want this to tap into here, and then we continue on upwards, maybe into the dollar range to start testing those areas of interest. And in terms of realistically just support levels, if you guys look, we had this kind of being one, but we've already smashed past that. We had this being a resistance level, I guess, around right here. So maybe this would be an area we go to revisit from previous levels. There really isn't much, I guess right here, maybe another level. But in general, as far as Aerodrome is concerned, it looks like long-term we're breaking into bullish momentum. We just need to continue that, and we'll see what happens with that, but that's all that there is with the chart. Now, one thing I'd like to just clarify is the fact that Aerodrome right now is 14 times smaller than that of PancakeSwap is currently, or at PancakeSwap's previous all-time high. And if you guys remember, we had a major alt season where those coins like PancakeSwap, Uniswap, those that were providing strong utility in terms of DeFi, were running up. And so if Aerodrome happens to do the same exact thing, then we could see that of PancakeSwap. Maybe Aerodrome revisits the $2 level and pushes up potentially into the $5 to $8 level, which that of PancakeSwap was, especially if base gets more attention and just in general, the market gets a lot more momentum than it currently has. and we don't have these narrative shifts where one month we have AI agents popping, another month we have Solana memes popping. We have just an overall market shift where the overall market is doing very well. Altcoins are doing very well, specifically those with utility. If we can have something like that, Aerodrome could reach these levels. So I just like to clarify that, but again, take that with a grain of salt. $5 to $8 to maybe $10 is definitely something that I will be looking at Aerodrome to potentially hit. But even then, I'd be fine buying in right now and potentially selling at that $2 to $3 to even $4 range. Honestly, it does not hurt to be realistic. But again, the $5, $10 range would definitely be nice to have. Now let's get into my overall thoughts on Aerodrome Finance. A lot of what we just talked about was overall scripted. I'm gonna give you guys an unscripted point of view. This is going to be me more ranting about Aerodrome and just kind of give you guys some more of a preface. I invested in Aerodrome Finance around April or even March when it first released. So I was in pretty early. For me, that was like at 60 cents, even though I'd heard about it previously. I finally jumped the gun then. And I was able to ride it up to that around $2.20 that we hit, I believe, in May. Then I was buying throughout summer when we were in that choppiness due to me seeing potentially fall being of 2024 doing really good for crypto, which it did. And so then we saw Aerodrome revisit $2 again, but because of the tariffs going into 2025, the presidency being something that just threw a bunch of us off, we saw Aerodrome fall down to, I believe, recently it hit almost 30 cents. I think it hit like 28 cents, which is very low for that of Aerodrome, but it went from 28 cents to 60 cents, so we were able to see a 2x off that, which is of course great to see. Now, what I honestly think about it, I think this is, again, just one of those projects that provides immense utility that a lot of people just are bored with those utility coins, but I think overall, fundamentally, what this token provides, the people who are using it, it's TVL. There's so many different factors. Coinbase is investing in this token. It just, I don't know, it's the coin on base that people talk about in terms of utility. It's one of the major three that are brought up in terms of it providing utility. It's really hard to name other ones besides that. Moonwell, we're gonna make a video on. But in general, I still think Aerodrome is one of the best utility coins on base, especially for DeFi. But in general, I think it's very reasonable that if 2025 just is a good year for crypto, that we could see a $5 to $10 Aerodrome come out of this year. But again, we have to have so many factors aligned for that to happen. So ultimately, we'll see what happens. I'm generally just going to be buying more Aerodrome. I'm actually going to be loading up on some more very soon. But I do plan on holding this for the next couple of years. But if we see 2025 be very good for crypto, maybe I will exit this year. So it'll all just come down to what happens next, guys. But overall, Aerodrome's a solid project. It always has been. We'll always have faith on it. But I will be giving you guys those updates on the of Talent, Crow, a bunch of other tokens. We'll give you guys updates on that. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys later.